My dear, are you awake?
Nikki Chambers had fallen asleep on her best friend's tombstone when she heard those strange words from a woman with an airy, almost velvety voice. She lifted her head from the granite to see the woman's low vamp, tawny slippers, and flowing green skirt. She couldn't lift her head more than a few inches, even though she had slept for hours. She grew more weary and weaker by the day, especially in the years since Lucas passed. He was the only person buried in Lamson Corner Cemetery in over a decade. She found it unfair that her best friend had only a flat tombstone that sat flush with the ground. The Johnston family had very little money for one. No services were held. They paid the groundskeeper to have him buried without any visible markers. They pretended that Lucas never withered away to 60 pounds in less than 6 T-cells.
Are you here to take me?
No one takes you when you're gone, the velvety voice replied. To Nikki's surprise, the voice turned gruff and gravely. You're left to wander here until everyone forgets your name. And eventually you forget your own. A cruel breeze blasted over Nikki, lifting the orchids she scattered on Lucas's stone. The orchids circled her like a cyclone. She lifted her head a few inches higher to see the lady's thin, graying arms and waterfall of umber hair completely cover her face.
What do you want from me?
Nikki said weakly, now sitting completely upright. The lady said nothing, dress flowing in the breeze, orchids now circling her. Nikki had lost track of time. It was late in the afternoon and gray clouds were blanketing the sky. She wondered if her parents, who thought her illness was her fault, cared how late she stayed out, or if she withered away on Lucas's tombstone, a death she found preferable to dying within the walls of the place she once called home. What do you want from me? Nikki summoned the strength to scream, red hair flowing down her face, the purple blotches on her skin seeming to multiply. I can help you remember who you are. Just don't hurt me or this place. You will live, my dear, the lady bellowed, extending a gray hand to her shoulder, which felt an awful lot like clay. You will be one of 2 who remember. One of 2? What do you mean? If you make others remember, you will forget. I don't understand. The woman stood motionless, wind tossing her umber hair. My home is some ways down the road. I must go. Nikki blinked, and she was gone. Nikki blinked again, and she saw Lucas's frail body standing before her. He looked frailer than the last time she saw him. He was wearing the black and white hood and cross his parents buried him with. His face was no longer a deep shade of brown, but grayer than the lady's clay skin, his eyelids drooping, his lips crooked. Before she could say his name, her best friend's head and limbs collapsed into the grass and dirt beneath them. Beyond this life of fee, the head said, its lips contorting into its chin. Nikki screamed louder than she ever had before, vomiting on her red hoodie, and darted as fast as she could to the front of the cemetery, not looking back as the head screamed again. Beyond this life, a fog. Nearing the entrance, Nikki smelled something foul and started to convulse. It reeked like a putrid combination of rotten eggs and sulfur, much like the swamp she used to go to in summer camp. She started coughing profusely, a deep cough she felt in her ribs when a green mist rose from the earth and surrounded her. She resumed running, unsure of which direction she should run in, while the voice cackled. The mist grew increasingly thicker as Nikki smacked into a stone wall. She hollered and clutched her knees. The voice cackled once more and the mist subsided. Nikki let out a scream that echoed out into the desolate road. She ran down the steep path that led to Milford Street. A large truck zoomed by Nikki, blaring its horn as she scampered inside the white edged lines. When Nikki was sure that no other cars were coming, she crossed the road and forced her violently shaking body down onto the curb. She couldn't grasp what horrifying thing she had seen, but was almost sure it wasn't Lucas. Still, she couldn't erase the image of the screaming, severed head from her mind, nor could she forget that lady with the flowing green dress. The doctor warned her that as the virus progressed and her immune system weakened, she might begin to hallucinate. Nikki blinked once and spotted the lady with the flowing green dress across the road, levitating over a pile of leaves. Though the woman stood a stone's throw away, she could barely discern her features. Her skin now looked as grayer than the rocky face of a mountain. Her eyes, now visible, were gray too, shining like iron. The woman opened her mouth, unleashing a thick green cloud of smoke. The cloud billowed into the atmosphere, stretching the length of the road. Nikki felt her heart stop momentarily as the smoke formed the face of a laughing man its jaws clamping down on the asphalt. "What do you want from me?" Nikki screamed. The face answered with a booming scream of its own. Nikki blinked twice and the cloud disappeared. Nikki vomited once more on her hoodie. After the figure vanished, Nikki lost track of time and her surroundings. Over several minutes, she used the self-talk technique her therapist taught her, reminding herself that hallucinations were nothing more than that, no matter how real they looked. Once Nikki composed herself, she wiped the vomit from her hoodie. She grew weary from a massive migraine, forcing her brain to remember the last time she saw Lucas alive. It had been so long since she saw him in the flesh, but she needed to remember him as he was and drive the horrible, headless figure from her thoughts. First, she remembered his skin, a lovely shade of brown with dimples. A memory came to her of the first time they went out for coffee. Lucas joked about them being yin and yang friends because she was so pale by comparison. Next, she remembered his deep brown eyes with hints of green that lit up a room and matched his goofy facial expressions. Finally, she remembered his pearly white smile, which he flashed no matter how sickly he grew. With all his features recalled, a memory came to her of a sweltering summer day a year and a half ago. He wasn't well, of course, but had all of his limbs attached. Nikki's mom dropped her off at the Waterbury Hospital. She took the elevator to the third floor, which Lucas half-jokingly termed pre-hospice. Nikki and his cousin Savannah were the only ones who visited these days. His parents' hate the sin, love the sinner mentality kept them away for the past few months until he'd ask God forgiveness for his sinful ways. It was a warm summer afternoon when she saw him lying in his hospital bed, a cold, sterile island in the middle of the room, sketching a 5-line skink. The skink lay in the palm of a pale, freckled hand. His obsession with lizards never ceased to amuse her, especially how he always dyed his mini dreads to match the color of his latest scaly favorite. She even bought him a lizard calendar, which stood upright on his table. June 1995 featured a Komodo dragon. "Is that supposed to be me?" Nikki said, tapping him on the shoulder. "Holy shit! Don't do that!" he shrieked, pulling the sleeve of the hospital gown over his lesioned shoulder. "Sorry," she said, kissing him on the cheek. Lucas blushed and continued to sketch. "Hey, is that hand supposed to be mine?" He smirked. "Do you want it to be?" "It's pale and freckly. I'd sure hope it's mine." "Then it's yours, Nikki Chambers. Or maybe it's your little brother. Colt is just as freckly." She giggled. "Ew, I hope it's not his clammy 7-year-old hands." As Nikki gave her best Colt impression, she saw another person standing in the doorway. When they realized it was Savannah, Nikki and Lucas waved their arms wildly, cheered, and made obnoxious sounds like the characters in Pee-wee's Playhouse, their favorite TV show. Savannah laughed, adjusting her knotless braids behind her shoulders. She was still wearing her outfit from the summer theater program, a leafy, vine-patterned dress with small bells on the fringes. Nikki was happy for Savannah's opportunity to play the part of Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. The sight of her glowing and healthy made her secretly sad as well, knowing 3 of them could have shared the stage. A year ago, summer theater was their life. Nikki feared it would be their last summer together. "I didn't even say the secret word." "Lord, what fools these mortals be," Lucas said, standing atop his bed. He had the best stage pose, but the worst British accent. Savannah giggled as Nikki joined him on the bed. "If you can't be good, be careful." "Guys, I just rehearsed these lines for the last hour." "How now, spirit? Whither wander you?" Nikki said in an even worse British accent, extending a hand. After a moment of giggling, she hopped on top of the bed and joined them. "You're going to make me do this?" They nodded enthusiastically. "Fine." Savannah rose and twirled around, which caused the twosome to cheer wildly again. "Captain of our fairy band, Helena, is here at hand." As Nikki and Lucas exploded into applause, they fell onto the bed and kicked their legs into the air, like they had done many times before. It felt so good to just exist for a moment without talking about their illness. It felt so right to roll around the bed sheets and close their eyes like they were at a sleepover again and not have to worry about not waking up. Skin to skin, face to face, they lived in the moment. Nikki hoped that, for once, her mom would forget to pick her up. Nikki hoped that, for once, Savannah's mom forgot too, and they could stay with Lucas as long as he needed them. At least Lucas looked more full of life than he had in the years since his diagnosis. At least Nikki felt more alive in the years since her diagnosis. If we stay still, do you think our parents will notice we're here? She said to Savannah, not thinking about Lucas's feelings at that moment. Maybe their vision is based on movement, Savannah added, forcing her limbs still. Your parents aren't Jurassic Park dinosaurs, and at least they give a shit. Lucas rose from the bed and plodded to the window. Standing in his hospital oversized gown, reality set in again. I'm sorry to sound dramatic, guys, but at least you have parents to go home to. Mine just left me here like a fucking pound dog. I know how it is, Nikki said faintly. I have it too. Yes, he said coldly. We both have the same virus, but your parents have a little bit of money, and when your time comes, they won't leave you there. Lucas, Savannah said faintly. The girls walked over to the window and wrapped their arms around his frail body, sobbing with him while simultaneously trying to shush him and tell him that they were there. You know what? Savannah said, fuck them. Yeah, fuck them, Nikki shouted. Fuck your stupid parents, and they're missing out on a damn good dog.